Hi everyone, my name is Anna and I'm a Swedish medium, and this is a new started YouTube channel about spirituality. And welcome everyone to this new series called The Journey of a Medium. This interview will be in English, but please feel free to use the Swedish subtitles if needed. And also for the English speaking community, please use the subtitles for the Swedish videos so you can watch them later too. First off, I want to send love and prayers to all the people affected by the hurricane. We in Sweden, we can't even imagine what you go through right now. We see devastating pictures from media that we only can describe as something that looks like a war zone. Our thoughts and our prayers are with all of you, and we hope that you will get through this and get all the support you need in this to heal. But today I will talk to a woman that I came across through a mediumship circle that has its roots in the United States. And this conversation will start out with Anne working in the streets of New York as a police officer, but how she is now working with spirit instead. We will jump right into it and see where this conversation will take us. Welcome, Anne McAvoy. Welcome, Anne McAvoy. So please tell us a little about yourself. Where do you live and what did you do for a living before you retired and became a medium?
Well, I currently live in Palm Coast, Florida. My husband and I moved here from Syracuse, New York, 15 years ago, and we both were in law enforcement. We both had a 30-year career in law enforcement, which comes up to 60 years between the two of us. He was a deputy sheriff, and I worked for the New York State Police. Just a little background because just to put things in focus for people. I started with a smaller department, and it was a time in 1977 that women weren't not only accepted, but we were given a really bad time. And I was very blessed to have a wonderful chief who believed in me and didn't give me a bad time about this. And after about 6 or 7 years there, I moved up to a bigger department, which had better pay and better benefits, of course. And then I was engaged to someone who really wanted me off the road, and my family wanted me off the road, and there was a great deal of pressure. So I went to work for the New York State Police. Um, Shortly thereafterwards, inside, I was no longer on the road. So that calmed everybody down a little bit.
I see. I see. What an interesting story. The journey you are on right now, I would say, working with spirit. Where did all this begin? From where did this originate? Do you remember?
Well, if we had to come up with a starting point, I'd have to say around 3 years old. I began chatting with my friend whose name was Praise Ye the Lord. Now, I want to give a caveat here that that may not have been his name. He just said that a lot, so I thought that was his name. And my family thought, isn't that cute? She has a little invisible friend whose name is Praise Ye the Lord. He turned out to be really, really invaluable. There was a day that I decided I wanted to help my aunt, and I was being babysat by my older sister, 9 years older. And we came inside from swinging, and she put me in my crib and took off my socks and this and that. And I waited till she had gone back in the backyard, and I snuck out of the crib. And I had heard my mother talking to my aunt on the phone earlier in the day, and my aunt was very upset. She wanted a new dress, and her husband said no. They couldn't afford it. Now, remember, this is early 50s, really early 50s. So I had my play money, and I was going to go find my aunt and give her the money so she could buy her dress. Unfortunately, I didn't tell anybody. I just took off. And it was a very hot summer day. All I had on was a little sunsuit, no socks, no shoes, no anything, just a little sunsuit and play money in my little fist. And before I had gone very, very far at all, Praise Ye the Lord showed up. And he said, okay, you're determined to do this, so we're going to do this together. And I said, okay. Now, I want to have everyone understand parts of this in my memory were blocked until I was hypnotized to bring back, because there was a mystery in everyone's mind how a little kid walked miles and miles and miles through busy traffic and crossing busy traffic streets. And those were in the days that if a person saw a little kid walking around, they'd stop and say, where's your mommy, and this and that. Not so much in today's day, because you'd be accused of being a pedophile or something. So it was extremely unusual that a 3-year-old could have walked miles in her bare feet in a city, a busy city. What happened was he walked with me for a while. And when we were crossing a street, of course, nobody else could see him but me, he would somehow block the traffic. He'd put his arms out and he'd do this funny little sideways dance to make sure the traffic would just slow down for whatever reason. They couldn't figure out why. And I would cross the street. And that's how I crossed a great many streets, with his doing this. And after a couple miles of walking, a person, turned out she wasn't a person, but she looked like a person, pulled up in a very fancy car. And Praise Ye the Lord and I got in. And of course, I was always told never to get in a car with strangers, but she wasn't strange. She was really nice. So they took me well, not all the way to my aunt's house, but they took me someplace even better. And they dropped me off in front of this house and said, go up to the front door, knock on the door, tell them your name, and they will know what to do. And I said, okay. And I looked back and they were parked quite a ways back. They were watching me, but they didn't go up to the front yard, to the front door with me. And now what I didn't know and what they did know was, of course, there was no TV then. Everything was on radio. But the news of this missing 3-year-old was being broadcast on the radio constantly. Here's what she's wearing and this and that. So I knocked on the door and the man came and I said, my name is Annie. I'm hungry and I have to go potty. And he said, okay. He knew exactly who I was. So, he supplied me with ice cream. And for years, I thought my mother showed up in a taxi, because she took taxis everywhere. And the reason was he talked on a microphone and he wore a hat. So, of course, it wasn't. It was a police officer that showed up that talked in a microphone and wore a hat, and brought me back home. But it puzzled people for years, all these questions. How did this little kid walk all this way all by herself and didn't get hit or something terrible happened to me? So after a while, I had myself hypnotized on this and got the answer. There is a little side note to that story. The house they dropped me off at was the district superintendent of churches for Northern New York. Wasn't just any house. And to jump ahead about 13 years, the person who went to live in that house, a different district superintendent, was the father of my best friend. And I actually lived in that house for a while. I lived with them for a while. So talk about a story coming back around.
For sure.
So that was one of the first things, I guess I'd have to say, that happened, that puzzled the whole family. It puzzled everyone. How did this happen?
Wow, thank you for sharing that. I actually never heard that story before. The miracle of spirit. It's amazing. But during the years, how have the communication with spirit developed, and how have spirit connected with you? If you can give us some examples.
Well, I'm going to start with growing up. We moved to a different home, and it was a haunted house. I grew up in a haunted house. And I actually wrote about this in Fate magazine, Ghosts on the Hill.
Mm.
And I think that was like it was like a freeway for spirits coming and going. And I think that one of the most notable things of that time was hearing the angels sing. I had a very small bedroom, one bed, one window, and there was no air conditioning or anything. It was a hot summer day. And we had screens, if anybody remembers the old-fashioned screens that you pushed apart like this, and then you brought the window down on top of it. And I suddenly heard music, just beautiful music. And I was alone there in my room. And I'm trying to figure, and I'm about 9 or 10, where this music was coming from. So I took the screen out, I stuck my head out the window, thinking, must be coming from outside. Now, remember, this is early 50s, 1950s. There was no stereo, there was record players, and people would not play their record player very, very loud. It just wasn't done. People didn't drive up and down the street with their radio blasting the way they do now in their cars. It just wasn't done. So there was no music coming from the outside, which meant it was coming from my room. Now, as beautiful as it was, and I would love to hear it again, I was scared to death. And I ran downstairs, taking the stairs 2 or 3 at a time until I got downstairs. And I said, Mom, I just heard the angels sing. And normally she'd be critical and skeptical. And she looked at me and she said, Yeah, I think you probably did. So that was one of the positive things growing up in a haunted house. That was one of the nice things that happened. Um, when I married my current husband that just passed, we were in our new home in Liverpool, New York, and it was our first Christmas. And I was doing it up big. I had decorated every spot that could be possibly decorated. I was making Christmas cookies. I had Christmas music on. I'm singing along as I'm making my little cutouts and frosting them and whatnot. And suddenly I hear my dad standing next to me singing Christmas carols with me. And my dad had been dead for years. But there he was in the kitchen singing with me. And then I was scared to stop because maybe he wouldn't sing anymore. And that's what happened. He just sang the one song with me. That was probably the beginning of realizing that house was also, I believe, on a ley line. And I'm not going to waste everybody's time describing what ley lines were and the whole thing. But I did look it up to find out how come our house was so weird. And it was in direct line with Onondaga Lake, which is a very spiritual place. So I think we were on a ley line there. So I opened my office there, part-time office, because I was still working full-time. And we had some great experiences with orbs, actually. I would feel ahead of time if a spirit was coming in for a client. Say they had a 2 o'clock appointment, by 1:30, I would feel the spirit hanging around. And if my husband happened to be home, because we usually work different shifts for most of our career, I would ask him to start taking pictures from the living room into the hallway and in front of my office door and see what we could catch. And sure enough, we would see the orbs coming in through the living room door, living room wall, through the hallway wall, and it would go right into my office. And that happened over and over again. So I thought, I'm not imagining it. There really are spirits here. I don't know if I had talked to them the way you and I understand it now. I didn't understand mediumship. You have to remember when I'm a third generation psychic, but it was never discussed and nobody ever used the word psychic.
May I interrupt you there? Will you please
Sure.
describe what psychic is for the audience that don't know what a psychic is?
Ooh.
What the difference between a psychic and a medium?
We have an ability that we know things about people, places, and things that most people don't. And we often can see somewhat into the future, usually not way, way into the future, but somewhat into the future of what will happen in this instance and that instance. And I knew even in high school that there was something different about me. And well, for example, I had a near-death experience when I was 4, but I was sternly instructed by my mother to never, ever discuss it.
Mm.
And I didn't until I was in my 50s. And the reason why she did that was to protect me. If anybody talked about a near-death experience at that time, they were put in a mental institution.
Oh,
Yeah. So I didn't understand the whole concept, but I just got off my story here with a near-death experience because there's a whole package on that. Um, but at any rate, I would read playing cards. I never heard of tarot cards. I never saw a tarot card until I was well into my 20s. And I would read the playing cards for my girlfriends after school. We'd sit on my bed and I'd do readings for them. Again, it just seemed like a game. It didn't seem like anything, a big deal. Later on, through an earlier marriage, my gift wasn't appreciated, and I became very closed off and didn't discuss. I tried not to discuss anything anyway, to keep everyone happy.
mm.
Wasn't always possible. So when I met my husband that just passed, we were together for 35 years. One of the first things when we got serious, I said, I have pretended to be someone that I'm not for a very long time. And you're going to have a very unusual life with me. I'm warning you right now. Are you okay with that? And he said, I'm okay with that. So the rest is history.
Wow. You have been walking with spirit your entire life. But what made you take the step to take this further, to decide that you wanted to become a medium?
Um, well, I'm going to bring it back to 9/11 and still back at that house in Liverpool. After 9/11, now remember, we were 5 hours from New York City. We lived in Liverpool, Syracuse, New York, not New York City. But if everybody remembers, there was this cloud of cement dust and people dust and whatnot that was circling the earth. And I had a back room that I called my room. It had my stuffed animals in it, and it was just a silly room. And I read there, and great little comfy chair and the whole thing. On and of course it was a very warm September too that year. So I had all the windows open, and in that room alone, I would find about a half inch of dust daily. And you couldn't dust with a duster because it would just go everywhere. So you had to use a vacuum cleaner. And I'm thinking, oh my God, who am I vacuuming up here in my vacuum cleaner? Because there's probably somebody in here. And that went on and on. And then I started feeling the spirits coming through. And they were just, I know you're in Sweden. I don't know if you know what Grand Central Station is, but it's a place in New York City where there's a lot of trains. It's very, very busy.
Yeah.
And that's how I felt my house was now, only I couldn't see who was coming and going. I mean, I was used to family dying and coming back and visiting. That was fine, but I didn't know these people are coming through my house. And as I wrote, and I'm going to hold up a book, what I wrote in this book here, the first book.
Will you put it closer to the camera so the audience can see it? The title of
Just
the
who are they anyway?
yeah. We can link it in the description later.
I went into the bathroom and shut the door. I was alone in the house. And if you think in your own place, if you look underneath the door, you can tell when somebody's walking up the hallway because there's a change in the shadows in that crack underneath the door. And I was in the bathroom alone in the house, I thought, and there's these footsteps going up the hallway. And I said, this is it. We're done. We're done here. So I jumped up and opened up the door and I screamed at it. I said, you have to leave me alone. Just leave me alone. You are not allowed anywhere near the bathroom when I'm in it. Yeah, you can't come. And then I called a friend that was a medium that I respected. We have done a lot of shows together. And I said, Jane, something's going on here. And there's spirits everywhere. I don't like this at all. And she said, Annie, your light has just got so bright that they're attracted to you. And I said, what do I do? And she said, get used to it.
Yeah, the life of a medium, right?
So I didn't get used to it. I didn't like it. I didn't like anything about it. And I kept trying to shut the door on that over and over and over again. So there was so much going on. And spirit, I'm have a connection with my guides and teachers and angels, and they call themselves they. And they made it very clear because I bugged them for years. What is your name? Because everybody else had a name of their spirit guide or something. And I thought, what is your name? Well, first of all, there is more than one of us. Okay, then what is your names, plural? And they wouldn't answer me. They just kept saying names are really not important. Human beings attach too much importance to who we used to be and, whatever. And I said, I want a name. So finally they said, okay, we're they. I said, they who? No, we're they. We're just they. And it's capital letters and bold font. And then they started laughing. They have a wonderful sense of humor. But that's the way they've always insisted that they refer to. So whenever I am printing something in one of my books, it's always capital letter, bold font for they to make them happy. So they started working with me. Actually, they'd been working me right along. I just didn't know it. And then I started getting actively working with them. By the time we moved here in 2009, and that's a beautiful story by itself. The angels really got busy. And you just heard a little smitter of this yesterday for the first time. We thought we were moving to Asheville, North Carolina, which for people here in the States, it's kind of a mecca of metaphysical community. And we both had retired and we put a purchase offer in a house in Asheville. And this was 2007, and the real estate market was tanking everywhere here in the United States. I don't know about any place else, but it was tanking here. And the house didn't sell and didn't sell and didn't sell. And the people that we put the purchase offer in kept tormenting me with messages saying, it's such a beautiful day. We'd be, up to 3 feet of snow and they're in Syracuse. And they, oh no, it's a beautiful day. We took the convertible out today. And I said, oh, this just isn't fair. I want to go to Asheville. Well, it didn't work out. Long story short, we lost the house we had the purchase offer on because we couldn't afford to have 2 houses at once. So, and then the story of how we ended up in Palm Coast is another beautiful. They are in my lives constantly. It's hard to pick out different stories. But the house hadn't sold. It'd been on the market for 18 months. And even for 2007, that was a long time. But they were navigating the whole thing. Sometimes I call them the committee. They put things and people in your path. So even if you're a little dense, you might get the idea. So I was doing a radio show at that time from Palm Coast, but it was down from home. I'm sorry, from home in Liverpool down to Palm Coast. And they kept saying, well, why don't you move to Florida? And I said, I'm never moving to Florida. It's a nice place to visit, but I'm never moving there. So one night I decided to go online and look at property in Florida. Now, Asheville property had gone up and up and up, and I think we can afford a nice outhouse by the time the property values went up so high. And I looked at and of course, it was real estate had tanked here in Florida too, but to our benefit. And I said, oh, we can get a nice house and we can afford it. So I went downstairs and talked to my husband down in his office. And I said, how do you feel about moving to Florida? He says, I'm okay with it. The next day, we hadn't had a single offer. The next day, we got 3 offers on our house. And we were here in Palm Coast, Florida, 2 months later to live.
Wow, that's how spirit works. Uh,
So I don't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead.
no, it's okay. It's okay. You continue.
Um, and a little piece of this story that I told you and a few others about Asheville, I do trades with other psychics every now and then. We'll just trade back and forth for free. And I was so frustrated about this house not selling. The lovely, lovely home. Why is it just sitting here? And the psychic I talked to said, it's nothing that you are doing. It's not your fault, but they are protecting you. There is a storm coming to Asheville, North Carolina, and they do not want you to be there. So they're redirecting you. And I didn't like that one little bit. And for anybody who's listening to this show, you may know that Hurricane Helene started in Florida, but it went all the way up to North Carolina, and Nashville is in the mountains, and you just don't think of flooding and the mess that they are currently under. And I don't know what the current figure is. I think it's 130 dead and over 600 missing. This was the storm that they were trying to keep us out of.
We have come across your husband Ed during the conversation, and as we know, as you told us, he went back to spirit for not so long ago,
Mhm.
after a time of illness. But do you feel like this experience changed you in any way, like changed your mediumship in some way after Ed's passing?
Yeah. I was so dead set against being a medium. I didn't want any part of it. But Ed communicated with me immediately, right out of his body. I was sitting next to him in the hospice room, and I was talking to a neighbor who had just lost her husband about a week or so before. And all of a sudden, I heard in my head, not with the outside ears, but inside, I heard, I'm leaving now. And I said, May, I got to go. And I hung up on her. And I walked around. I started walking around the edge of the bed to the other side. And as I'm walking, I see this cloud is the best way I can explain it. And it was probably around this big. It wasn't a big cloud. It was, like this. And it was undulating and moving. And it was kind of a gold color, golden yellow. And it was moving up toward the ceiling and out toward the top of the room and the lanai doors. And at the time, I said, huh. And I just kept walking because I had to get to him. And of course, what I had seen was his soul leaving his body. He was letting me know. And I happened to look up just at that time and saw it. So he started communicating immediately. And I tried a couple different things to get a hold of him, to reach him. And finally, I said, I've just got to open that door again. I have to. And once I made that decision, the committee, were waiting for me to make that decision. And I said, well, what do I do now? Where do I go from here? Because I don't know how to be a medium. So about 2 months after, about a month after Ed died, I got an email from James Van Prague. And I thought, I never get emails from James Van Prague. Why am I getting one now? But the email talked about some kind of free thing that they were doing and blah, blah, blah. So I said, okay, I'm in for free. And I went to that. And then he was saying, you can sign up for this class to become a medium. And I said, hmm. And I'm a great gal asking for signs all the time. Give me a sign. Am I supposed to do this? And I got a distinct yes. So I went online and they had said, don't worry, it's only $175 because at that time, no money had come in at all from his estate. It came in very, very slow in little dribs and drabs. And I started looking at the price of the class and I said, I've never known you guys to be wrong, but boy, are you wrong. It is not $175. And they said, oh, yeah, you have little faith. Keep going. So I found this section toward the very bottom of the sign-up sheet that said you could sign up for a scholarship. And I said, what have I got to lose here? So I signed up and I said, they'll never get back to me. They probably got so many people. A couple hours later, I got an email that I was accepted for the scholarship. And of course, guess how much the scholarship was? $175.
So meant to be, so meant to be.
So the committee is pretty precise. Sometimes they.
They showed you the way once again. And I also got the privilege to get a visit from Ed at your anniversary, your wedding anniversary. And I really loved his energy. I liked the visit. And he showed me all these amazing trips you have been together and memories he really cherished. And I really cherished that he came by and gave me a visit. So I love
Yeah, he's been amazing.
Yeah.
He's he doesn't come through to every medium. He comes through to you quite well and a few other people, but he doesn't seem to come through to everyone that easily. But I've heard him talking here. I can't make out what he's saying. I heard him talking the very night that he died. Um, but he has made all kinds of contact with me, and one of the most notable ones, I think, and I'll have to send you a picture of it. He had a Mustang that was his baby. But I couldn't keep paying the car insurance on a car that wasn't going to move. I didn't even want to sit in the car anymore. I wanted it gone. And he'd been dead around a month, and some friends came over bringing wine. And one of them said, we don't want to upset you. We just would like to know if you're thinking of selling Ed's Mustang. And I said, as a matter of fact, I am. And she said, we'll get back to you. She said, come up with a figure. So I had already discussed it with a male friend of mine because I don't know how much it was worth. I had no idea. And he said, anybody asks, tell them this figure. This is the figure that you tell them. And I said, okay. So she and her husband came back the next day and said, how much do you want? And I said, well, my friend says I should ask for just this figure. So I am. And he said, fine. And I said, okay. So the day he had to, go get this, that, and the other things, and, before we could get all the legal stuff, the day that he was due to come pick it up, a few years ago, I had a magazine cover made for Ed for Christmas, and it was him and his Mustang. And it's like a pretend car magazine. And here's Ed McAvoy with his Mustang, and he's posing in front of it and the whole thing. Darn cute thing. And I didn't want to take it off the wall and bring it outside, so I took a picture. And the first picture I took, I thought, oh, there's some blurry, and I didn't move. I mean, the two pictures were taken, bada boom, bada bing. It was that fast. And okay, I'll take another picture. Same place, I hadn't moved, just seconds later, bing. Second picture was fine. So I took it out and I showed him, the magazine cover. So a day or so later, I think it was about a day later, I'm going through the pictures and I almost deleted this picture with a blur in it. And I said, well, I want to see what that blur is. So I, made it bigger, spreading it out with my fingers, and I go, oh my God. There in the picture are these streams of light. It wasn't a blur, it was a stream of light. And Ed's little face is almost behind the driver's wheel of that car, the picture of the car. And I was speechless. What do I do with this? This, Ed, how did you do this? How did you put your little face? Oh, you just missed it by a little bit. You can tell he was aiming for me at
Yeah.
the driver's wheel. So he has been amazingly clever.
So creative, so creative. It's amazing how he has been working through your computer and all these technical things and all these photographs you have shown us. He's been very, very creative for sure.
Well,
So,
one thing that you know too was we had a teacher, and I want to back up a little bit because you asked how I made this decision. And a few days after Ed died, I had a girlfriend here in Palm Coast that her husband died. She moved back to England, and and she was not only a friend, she was also a client. So I knew that she had a sweetheart, over there. And she was coming back to the States. She tried several times, but COVID kept getting in the way. And she said, I'm bringing my sweetheart with me. And would you like to meet him? I said, yes, I have to find out what his intent is with my friend. So they came a few days after Ed died here in the living room. And we were just chatting. And my son got up and went out to the driveway for a few minutes. And I said, Chris, I know that you're a medium. Val told me. I said, can you see my husband here? He said, oh, yeah, Ed's here. And I said, is he over there? He said, no, he's standing right behind you. And he's talking about, how strong his legs are now and how straight his fingers are now, no more arthritis. And he can walk anywhere now. His legs are, and then my son came back in and we quit talking. So a little while later, after they left, I texted my friend and I said, please tell Chris. I appreciate so much the message. And she said, oh, no, there was more. He just stopped talking. I said, what else? Well, Chris had relayed part of a conversation, a private conversation that Ed and I'd had about 6 months before he died. And I can't go over it because I cry every time. I'll just tell you it was a private conversation. And he's repeating this conversation back to me. And he's saying, I will never, ever leave you. I'm right here with you. And that was really the thing that opened the door. And I said, I've got to be able to talk to him myself. I have to.
wow, now you're making me cry.
Someday I
Wow.
can tell the whole story without crying, but right now I can't do it.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing this. But now we have to talk about your books, Anne,
Yes.
because you have written some books during your life, and now you're about to publish your latest one. So
Mhm.
tell us about them and what made you want to write books to start with.
I didn't want to write books. I had no plan. I didn't think I had anything to say. People have something to say. Now, my husband was a wonderful writer, and I was constantly encouraging him. But I wrote for other people's books. I was a columnist for a magazine for 19 years. And I was happy doing that. And I have to tell you an addendum to this story because it's a spirit story. I had a friend, and I teach Course in Miracles every week, and I had a friend that was in Course in Miracles, and he was also an author. He published several books, and I was just, I don't know what to do. So he came, and he was sitting in this very chair right where I am right now, and he's going through things with me, do this, do that, do this, and I'm just terrified. And I said, are you going to be available for questions whenever I get stuck? Because I knew I was going to get stuck. And he said, of course, I will always be here for your questions. That was on a Monday. He died on Thursday, just found dead in his rocking chair. So that night, actually, it was the next night, his girlfriend lived in Pennsylvania, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and I knew her. And I'm typing back and forth to her over Facebook. And I'm mad at Joe. I am so mad at him because he went and died before my book was done. You couldn't have waited until I get the book done. You had to die right afterwards. I need you.
Yeah.
And I'm just fussing it. I mean, I'm partly serious and partly not serious, right? I'm terribly devastated. My friend is dead. But after all, he promised that he would be here to help me. And I'm typing all this to his girl. And I said, he promised me that he would always be here to answer my questions. So what happened next was freaky. It was just a regular picture, your little Facebook thing on your computer, on your screen. We're just going back and forth. And suddenly my screen is this GIF. And it's a little meme, a little GIF that I sent him months before. We were born on exactly the same day and exactly the same year, but exactly 12 hours apart, which I found was really freaky. And we would tell people we were brother and sister, which we got a lot of giggles over because somebody said, oh my God, your mother had a 12-hour labor in between you two. Oh my God, that poor woman. And we just giggle, you know. So I had sent him this joke, this game, a GIF that said, my big brother has the greatest little sister, just saying. Now I had sent that months before to him. Here I am going back and forth with his girlfriend, and now my screen is full of this GIF that I sent him months before. And I couldn't even speak or anything because my mouth just hung open. I said, how could this be? How can this be? And I finally typing, I said, Susan, you're not going to believe what just happened. And it's still on my screen. And, I'm telling her. So it was a message from Joe. He promised that he would be here to help me, and he didn't go anywhere. He was right here to help me. So he did help me finish that first book and the second book. And this is something I wanted to, it's actually a piece of art, and I will explain it. I had written the first book. I was writing the second book. I, for some reason, thought I was going to be this world famous author immediately, this whole thing. And why should I even bother with this? Well, they had told me, THEY, the capital, had told me that I was going to write 3 books about them. And I'd written one and I was partway into the other one, and I was getting discouraged that I wasn't this world famous author yet, not by a long shot. And I'm a great one for asking for signs. And I said, you have to give me a sign because I just don't want to keep going. I really don't. The next day, I sit down here in front of my computer, and there's a picture on my computer. And I will show you what the picture is and explain it. That is actually a piece of art, and it's called The Impact of a Book by Jorge Mendez Blake. And it's a brick wall, and at the very bottom in the middle, there is a book holding up the brick wall.
Yeah.
And I said, I think you're saying I got to keep going because this book is holding up a whole brick wall. And the name of this is The Impact of a Book, the name of the art. I'm giving myself goosebumps by telling you here. So I kept going, of course. And the first book, of course, is just Who Are They Anyway? And then the second book is They're Back. And the third book, which is half written, which I'll explain why it's only half written, is They Never Left. But when Ed died, I started pretty much journaling, but here on the computer. And I said, this is turning into a book. And I said, okay, I'm good with this. Let's keep going with this. And as I went through my day to day and poured it into this book, which is 100% true, all of it, I realized that this was going to be helpful to other medium, to other new widows and widowers, that most of us share some common issues, that nobody around us really understands what's going on. Unless you've lost a husband or a wife, you don't. And people try to be sympathetic and they try to be kind, and that's great, but they really don't know what we're going through. So between that, and as I went through each thing with the life insurance and the VA and Social Security and all of it, I put it down, because all of it are little snares and traps that you get stuck in. And it would have been great to have someone around to say, don't do this, but do this, and so forth. And so I said, okay, I'm putting this into the book. And then I started introducing slowly the mediumship thing. And because in the grief groups I've been in, one of the most common things that I hear from the other widows and widowers is, are they okay? Well, I know they are, but I can't tell you that because you haven't asked me. And I can't just be a Badinsky and say, yes, they're fine. And another common complaint is, no one understands what I'm going through. And I do understand 100%. So there was many things that we keep inside. I call it wearing a mask. We wear this mask for months afterwards that we're just fine. Just thank you very much. Don't even ask. And it's a mask. It's not true. So the book is meant to be helpful as far as stuff that you're going to run into as a new widow or a widower, but also to introduce how mediumship has helped me. It gave me some reason to get up every day. It gave me a purpose. And I have friends that are also new widows that one of them spends days just sitting on her couch staring at the wall. And God bless her. I'm not picking on her. I know the pain that she's in. So I'm not telling people by my book, well, go be a medium, because you've got to be drawn to it and you've got to be willing to put the work into it. It isn't just boom, you're a medium. You have to as you well know, you have to put time and effort and yourself into it. But what I'm saying is, it's okay to contact a medium. It's all right. Make sure you're talking to somebody reputable, of course. There are answers that you can get by either becoming a medium yourself, if that's your bent to begin with, or to contact someone else to help get those answers that you need from your loved one. It's okay. And it really, really helps the healing. And one of the things that I also highly recommend in the book, and I hope it gets into the right plans, I'd like to get to the caregivers before the death, because actually you start needing counseling months ahead of time. If you are a longtime caregiver, you're already grieving. And I didn't realize it. I was just being a little soldier and carrying on, and I have this to do and that to do and blah, blah, blah. And just squishing down all the sadness and emotion. So the sooner you can, if you're a caregiver, the sooner you can get into a grief counselor, the better. So the book is a multi-plan here.
Feel you really have an important job in front of you, because this book needs to be published, because you're going to help so many people who need to hear this and need to get the support they need, and just to get the understanding from someone who really understand what it is to lose a husband or a wife. As you said, we can only imagine the people who haven't and to get understanding from someone. I think it's so important. So I really, really hope that that book gets finished soon because the world need it. The world need it.
Well,
Yeah.
as you know, because I told you, but I've only told a couple people. I signed with a publisher earlier about a week ago. And I'm up to here now in all new things that I've never experienced before, but that's okay. And hopefully it'll be out in spring.
Wow.
So yes, my goal is to reach as many people as possible and help as many people as possible. And during a reading with James Van Praagh last January, at the time I thought he was full of it, um, he said I was going to reach thousands of people with help. Something that I was doing was going to reach thousands and thousands of people and help them. And I thought, boy, is he off the track. But maybe.
Oh, I'm sure that he's right. I got all these gums, what you call it, gum poke.
Goosebumps.
Yeah, yeah. I can't find the word. I understand English well, but I don't speak it as well. So where can we find your books? Where can we find and buy your books?
The first two books, um, Just Who Are They and They're Back, are both available on Kindle on Amazon. And if you have Kindle Unlimited, you can actually read them for free.
Hmm. Wow.
And I kept the price low on purpose because my reason is not materialistic, it's to help people. And both books, and I do want to go back to this because they're not just stories about me, my experiences with being a medium and a psychic and whatnot, and some of them are pretty funny. Around 2011, no, 2010, I take that back. Around 2010, I started channeling they, but I was channeling they for everyone. Prior to that, I would be channeling they on a one-to-one consultation with a client. They knew I talked to my guides and angels. It didn't matter, detail on it. But all of a sudden, they started channeling these messages in 2010 that were supposed to go out to everyone. And some of them are, wow. Um, they originally were recorded in the old-fashioned recorder. And then they were transcribed and they were sent out in a newsletter to a couple hundred people. And about that same time, around 2011 or 12, I opened up a YouTube channel, of which there are some of the readings from here. But the first part of each book are my stories. And then the second part of each book are the channelings from they that are meant from everyone. And what is amazing is 2010, these were channeled, but the messages are applying to right now, 2024. It's wow, I can't say how did they know. Of course, they have wonderful vision with a capital V. So they knew what we were going to be experiencing, but just briefly, they have a tendency of teaching the same lesson over and over and over again because, frankly, that's how we learn.
Yeah.
And they'll go about it a little bit different every way, but it's the same lesson every time. And they will have me climbing stairs, for example. There is I see a riot happening, people um, going through a nasty riot, hurting people and this type of thing, screaming and whatnot. And they'll have me go upstairs. Or in another scene, it would be something very similar where everything is very, very upsetting, and they'll have me go up a ladder. And one of my favorites is they have me climb up a hill. And they always have me turn around and look. Now, this is now from the observer's standpoint. When you get above it, this is from the observer. You're no longer dragged into whatever is going on around you, whatever upset, but instead you've gotten above it You're looking down at it and you are the observer. And then you can understand much better what's going on and that you're fine, you're safe. Just stay out of it, whatever it is, stay in your little spot that's up above and just keep being the observer. What wonderful advice that is.
For sure, for sure. Thank you for sharing this. Also, I feel we have been talking for a long time here, but I want to ask you two more questions, if that's okay.
Sure.
One thing is if you have any other goals besides your writing and the books right now, or plans for the future that comes with your mediumship and your psychic gifts.
Well, they are very busy. Indeed.
And they keep you busy.
They've got me even busier.
Yeah.
It started with I needed a new place to teach a Course in Miracles. I had brought the group home here because of Ed being so ill, and I didn't want to leave him. And the group was here almost 2 years. And I said, yeah, I think it's time that we found a spot. So I kind of put the thought out there. I need a wonderful spot. I want this, this, and this in the spot. And three things all happened in about the space of a week that kind of just didn't, it wasn't even a thing before I had asked, and all of a sudden it was a thing.
It's amazing when you put that order out to universe and when you be very specific how they answer you in the most amazing ways if you only have trust.
Just trust. Yeah.
Trust
Just
is all it
put it
takes.
out there and leave it alone. Quit
Yes,
picking at
yes.
it. Just leave it.
Surrender, surrender.
So the space that we're going through, a friend of mine I haven't seen in a long time, a wonderful business lady, and she's also extremely spiritual, has opened up a new place in Flagler Beach, Florida. And I was one of the first persons that she notified about it. And did I want to come and teach Course in Miracles there? And I said, let me look at it before I say yes. And she said, and not only that, she said, I want to bring in authors from the area. If you would come and talk about your books and this, that, and the other thing. And I said, sure, but come, let me look at the spot. Wow. She has remodeled with chandeliers and the whole thing. Oh my God. And then she shows me this huge room and she said, this is for your Course in Miracles. And she said, I'm going to get a podium for you. I said, look, we have shrunk down to about 6 people since COVID. You know, I'm not going to fill this room and I don't feel comfortable. I sit at a little table with them, you know. She said, maybe now you do, but you're going to have a big group here and you're going to need a way to stand up a book. And I said, okay, whatever, but show me a little room. So then we're talking and I told her about the mediumship thing. And I said, I have a condition though, that if I do this professionally, I want the people that are in deep pain. I want the new widow. I want the new widower that is in so much pain that they just don't want to keep going. That's who I want to help. That's who I want to reach out to. I do not want a gang of young ladies at a bachelorette party that want to talk to some dead musician or something. You know, I know lots of people out there that'll do that. This is my goal, to help the ones that are hurting so bad, because I know firsthand how that feels.
Yeah.
So she let it go about 24 hours and then she texted me and she said, first of all, you're not charging enough. I've never wanted to charge much. It's more important people get their help. And she said, there's going to be people that want to see you and they're not going to be able to afford to. And I said, well, I don't like that. And she said, oh, no, we have an answer. She said, my husband and I are going to start a nonprofit. So if somebody really needs to see you, the nonprofit will pay for it. And I'm going, ah, whoa. Well, it didn't stop there. I mean, all this happened within the course of just a few days. Bing, 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 bing. I had talked to one of my grief counselors. I have two favorites. And she was kind of talking about going back to school and getting social work degree and the whole thing. And I said, I'm almost 75. I do not want to go back to school. Sorry. thank you very much, but no. So she let it cook for a month. And next time I saw her, she said, I have it. She said, you can be a life coach. You don't need a degree. And you can still help people the way you want to. I said, I like that.
Yeah.
So I was offered an office there at this new building I'm talking about in Flagler Beach. She told me, I know you don't feel ready, but when you're ready, this office will be here for you to meet with clients and to begin to help people.
Wow. That's an
So the
amazing.
book is working in with everything else.
For sure it is. What an amazing goal for the future to be able to help people like that.
That's
And
what we work on.
lastly, I need to ask you, many people that is watching my YouTube channel watch me because they want to become a medium or they want to develop their own mediumship. So what is your best advice to the people who listen to this, who wants to connect with spirit world and who wants to develop in their own mediumship?
I don't think my path is all that different from a lot of other people. I looked into different things, different groups. Of course, the first group was with James Van Praagh. And then there was a little side group on Facebook. And then there was another little side group that branched off that and so forth. And they're delightful. They're wonderful, wonderful gals. And they're just, it's a piece of sunshine every Sunday morning. Um, and then I went with this group that my friend's sweetheart ran in the UK. All of it has been great training on what works, what doesn't work. You and I both were another group that definitely didn't work.
Let's, yeah, yeah. Let's leave it with that.
But I mean, you're not necessarily going to be a good fit in every group, but you will find access on Facebook to all kinds of medium groups. And I'm still exploring. When I get a little more time, I want to devote more of my time every week to more work on developing as I don't want to be a good medium, I want to be a great medium.
Yes. I say the same thing. I never settle with just good. And I absolutely agree with you that the best way to develop is in a development group and to find the right development group that fits you and that have a good energy and that you feel that you can develop in your own pace of time. So I think that is the greatest advice to people who want to develop mediumship because we need to practice to develop. We can't just do it by ourselves. We need
Right.
people to practice with, and a group is perfect. And as you said, you can find them on Facebook and online. They're amazing development groups there. And even as I said to my own students, because I also teach in mediumship, I tell them that even mediums that have been mediums for maybe 20 or 30 years, they sit in their development groups and they have or development circles because we always need them. We are never fully trained, or we always have to keep that muscle going to keep developing in mediumship.
I
And
agree.
I
Yeah.
need to say thank you so much for this conversation. It's been so interesting. I see time has gone faster than I thought. So thank you so much, and good luck with the book. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for asking me. This has been a lot of fun. This has been a pleasure.
A big thank you to everyone that has been spending this hour with us and watching this video. And you will see lots of more conversations just like this on my channel in the near future. And me talking to mediums about their journey of becoming mediums. And if you want to come in contact with Anne, you can find all of the links in the description box and also where you can find the books. Please subscribe so you won't miss out on any of the goods that will come. Take care now, everybody. Bye bye.